First up, we'll have Josh, Steve and myself talking about Bowen Stud and Bowen Genetics and our journey. First up, I'd like to invite Josh to the stage to speak about Bowen Stud and our rapid expansion over the last 15 years.
Thanks, Nick. Oh, hang on. Welcome to the Bowen Genetics Future of Beef Conference. The team at Bowen would like to thank our three guest speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedules to offer their expertise today. The Bowen cow herd is predominantly located at Barraba and comprises of approximately 500 Angus, 200 Pole Hereford and 100 Wagyu females. Each year we conduct an extensive AI and ET program, as well as using select size for natural joining. Once the breeders have calved out, their progeny is weaned and sent to Gunnedah to be grown out on winter forage crops. During their time at Gunnedah, their DNA is collected for genomics testing and parent verification. They are regularly weighed and are subjected to multiple quality assurance drafts to ensure a high standard of seed stock is maintained prior to joining or sale. The steers and lower tier heifers are given multiple vaccines, including MHIBR in preparation to predominantly be sold to feedlots. We follow their progress from feedlot induction through to carcass data results. This allows us to ensure that we are breeding cattle that meet a high standard of quality. The heifers that have been selected to retain in stud are put through an extensive vaccination program covering all venereal diseases before beginning an AI program at around 15 months of age. They carve out as 2-year-olds at Gunnedah. The top tier of bulls are retained for the sale each year. They go through a vaccination program that covers venereal diseases, tick fever, and BEF, and are also freeze branded, semen tested and scanned. The bulls are prepared on subtropical pasture during the warmer months before returning to Barraba once winter forage crops are well established prior to the sale in July. We grow crops in both areas to produce large amounts of our own silage and hay, and we also grow and strip our own barley for grain and straw requirements. We've invested significant amounts into feed and fodder storage improvements, which assists us in achieving our goal of running a closed-door operation that only requires additional feed and fodder to be purchased if seasonal conditions cause an increase in demand. Pasture improvements and sustainability are a high priority within our enterprise, which allows us to increase stock productivity and ensure we are producing a premium product that fits within current market demands. We will love receiving any feedback from our clients, including carcass data and progeny performance results. Thank you. I'll hand you on to Steve.
Thanks, Josh. I suppose listening to Josh, myself and Nick at this little stage is just about explaining where we've got to do this culinary testing, the meat quality testing with a dually. It's basically, I'll give you a bit of a brief of how Jody and I started, and then it'll lead on to Nick, then on to a dually. So to give you a brief outline of where we are today, Jody and I were very fortunate to work in 3 different countries in our early 20s, New Zealand, Canada and the USA. In doing so, we identified some elite breeders that we were able to work with and gain some valuable knowledge to bring back to our operation here in Australia. Among the enterprises we were able to work for was the famous Braxton Pole Hereford stud of Don and Doreen Goodall in New Zealand. We believe Don to be a real innovator in his breeding expertise. Back in the 80s, Don was the key driver of Hereford Prime, And he would go around restaurants, motels, and make sure everything was done right. And that was very, very early days for a branded product to hit the floor. Don was also the first person to bring an ultrasound scanner into New Zealand and to be registered as an official ultrasound technician. And he did this course at ABRI at Armidale, and his actual accreditation number was 007. He didn't look like Sean Connery, though. I also believe that Don was the first person ever to formulate dollar indexes of his own cattle and incorporate this data in his bull selling catalogue. This was formed into an individual dollar value for the different markets that could be pursued in New Zealand, in the New Zealand cattle industry. Certainly, Don Goodall was an inspiration to Jody and I, and it's something that sticks with you throughout your life, to see someone so progressive in the cattle industry. Here at Bowen, our Hereford stud was established in 1963 by my father and mother. We've been in breed plans since its inception, since the 1970s, when ABRI was established. To date, breed plan has been the best herd recording tool for a lot of traits in beef cattle production, and it's one of the many tools we use in our production system. But back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, and you learn off people like Don Goodall, you like to progress and continually strive for improvement. For many years, we found the ABRI, which is breed plan, reluctance to accept any carcass data outside of their restrictive model extremely frustrating, and I believe has definitely hurt the progression of carcass refinement in the Australian cattle industry back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. But thankfully now we have the industry recognised MSA grading system that allows carcass merit to be recognised and sold accordingly. This brings us down to the track where we are now. And it's a bit like, how many times have you been to the footy, or some do, the netball, and you've had a steak sandwich and it's like chewing on a bit of boot leather? Or is it just even just the inconsistency from your local butcher or your supermarket? We fully understand there's different cuts, different ways of killing cattle, different ages. We're certainly not naive to the challenges of the meat industry, as we've owned a share in a butcher shop in the early 2000s. It was a valuable learning experience, and that was in Lismore. And yes, we did our own farm kills through the years. The old favourite was the Milker's Vealer, and that was pretty good. But in more recent years, we've had some very impressive Herefords, Angus, and along came the Wagyu and F1s. This leads us to the question of why was there so much difference between breeds and the variance in meat eating quality within each breed? So therefore, in thinking about that, is there identifiable genes in each individual animal that could recognise marbling, fat melting point, oleic acid and omega-3s, which are the main enhancers of meat eating quality? Another reason why we've gone down this track is, as everyone knows in Australia, is it's a high cost environment to produce livestock. We at Bowen believe we must find better ways to breed the best consistent culinary experience to potentially obtain a premium. And I'll hand you on to Nick now for his next bit.
In 2019, Bowen Genetics was established following Stephen's meeting with Professor Adorley at the Wagyu conference in Townsville. Bowen Genetics identified a significant gap within the current breeding system. Beef cattle are traditionally only graded for meat quality after slaughter, resulting in a minimum 3 to 4 year wait before kill data can be analysed to determine whether the correct breeding decisions were made. Bowen Genetics set out to explore the missing link, whether the genetic code responsible for marbling and the exceptional meat-eating quality traits could be identified earlier in an animal's life, allowing producers to make faster, more accurate and informed breeding decisions. Not every animal qualified for testing. Each candidate was required to undergo and pass a comprehensive 3-step evaluation process before being included in the program. The first step, the animals we selected, we went through a 19-step visual assessment on animals of all 3 breeds, usually around weaning time, evaluating traits such as structural soundness, feet, temperament, capacity, frame, and overall balance. All characteristics we believe contribute to the ideal beef animal. Once they passed that step, the next step, we selected the animals using their estimated breeding values and how those figures aligned with the physical phenotype and performance traits. The final step was taking a small biopsy, which was ethically collected by a local vet between the 12th and 13th rib, a pea-sized tissue containing IMF, intramuscular fat, was immediately snap frozen, using liquid nitrogen and stored in a specimen jar for transport. During that time, 2 blood samples were also collected. One went into a tube containing heparin to prevent clotting and transfer it for testing. The second tube contained RNA Protect, which protects the animal's DNA structure so Adorley could extract it in the lab when it reached Townsville. All the tissue and blood samples were then air freighted overnight, which was a challenge during COVID, usually the whole time really, straight to Adorley in Townsville. Over the 7-year period, we've collected 200 animal biopsies, 250, and 500 sets of bloods, which have all been analysed. Currently now, Adorley has 180 sets of bloods from our W animals, which are waiting to be analysed.